I wasn't a big dieter, but I always wanted this, and it was this nagging thing. You get motivated, you try, and then you give up, and then that feeling used to come over me. Even 1 minute before I could have the best of intentions, then this feeling would come over me like, what could I eat? What is there? Potato chips or something in the refrigerator? And I would know, gee, you better not do that, but no, I don't care. I'd get up and have it anyway. And then afterward you say, but why did I do that? I could have not had it. This is the first thing that has ever changed how I feel inside. It's not just the outside thing, like, oh, I'm losing weight, this fits me. I feel a shift inside. I almost immediately felt I lost the need to eat compulsively. That's basically it. I changed my relationship with food. And it was so sudden that it felt like hard to believe.
We come to the third process in our Phoenix program, the yes or no phenomenon. It came to me as a sudden insight, which I'm happy to report happened. I was looking at the Sermon on the Mount, reading a passage from it, and I noticed that the master of Christianity said in that sermon that in talking about telling the truth and not swearing falsely and not bearing false witness, he said, simply put, say yes or no. Anything more comes from evil. And I was thinking about yes or no. And I thought, what happens physically when you say yes? You're nodding your head up and down, and all of you can follow me and nod your head up and down. And you're utilizing the possibility that's brought to us physically through the first cervical vertebrae, which permits you to nod your head yes. And that first cervical vertebrae is called the atlas. And the atlas is that bone that permits that movement. And as you know from mythology, Atlas was the mythical figure who held up the world on his shoulders. So we're holding up the world through the nodding of yes. The atlas allows us to hold our heads up and to become erect and stand up on our own 2 feet. And then when you say no, you're turning your head left to right, right to left, and the bone that's connected with it, the second cervical vertebrae, is called the axis. And the axis is what the world spins on. So we are using the atlas and the axis to hold ourselves up and to be in the rhythm and movement of the world in which we live, atlas and axis. Yes, no. So when you move your head in both directions, doing one, then the other, you actually are making the sign of the cross. And that sign of the cross has been an instrumental one in the development of our Western civilization over the last 2,000 years. So the question comes to us about how we're facing life through this yes or no phenomenon, because when we are faced with situations in our lives and with our interpersonal relationships and with decisions we have to make about this, that, and the other thing, it's always there for us to have to deal with yes or no. And of course, we know that the yes or no phenomenon here in the Phoenix process is used to eliminate indecision and doubt, the seed causes I mentioned of all of our disturbances. Well, what is indecision and doubt? It's yes and no. Just a simple change of the preposition or to and makes such a big difference in our lives, because if you go along and follow me and try and say yes and no, which is really the basis of doubt and indecision and ambivalence, what happens to you? And you notice that when you try to move your head in 2 directions at the same time, try to move yes and no all at once, you become disoriented, confused, unsure, and you now understanding what's happening not only outwardly in the physical body, but what's happening to us inwardly in our mental states and emotional states, which also has its reflection in our social state and in our moral state. So the yes or no phenomenon, from that simple pithy statement that he made, simply put, say yes or no. Everything more comes from evil. Evil meaning in the ancient wisdom and in the Western spiritual tradition, one of its major meanings being falsehoods. As he was talking about swearing falsely, not bearing false witness, evil means falsehood and good means truth. So we are always faced with having to say the truth accept the truth, speak the truth, or speaking its opposite, falsehoods. And then it throws us into a state often of confusion because we become afraid to say yes. We get concerned about the consequences, which is again projecting into the future. That stops us from taking the correct action, and we become paralyzed, both mentally, emotionally, as well as physically, and in our relationships as well, social life, and our moral life. And all of those have really consequences that are disruptive and lead us again along this path toward death that I mentioned earlier, that we're here to choose life or choose death, which is the essence of how we face our life circumstances.